Hello, beautiful. It is December 25th, 2021. It's about 44 degrees in mid-Michigan. The snow that was here yesterday has melted, which has left everything really wet and slippery. But shouldn't be any ice on the road with 43 degrees. I mean, I had this whole driveway was covered yesterday, so we're golden. It feels like I got a tack in my shoe. I think I'm overdressed. We'll see at the end of the ride if I'm overdressed. I got a stick or something in the back of my shoe. Look at all the snow piled up from where they plowed that. It's a little hazy up there. I hope I don't run into any weather. I'm going that way though, so I think I'll be all right. This is the type of day that you don't go out and you spend all afternoon, or you don't go spend all day, and it's not a weekend trip or anything like that. This is December 25th in Michigan, so it's not real warm, and I am dressed for the occasion, but it's not the type of day where you go out for an extended period of time. My parents live, they're like 15 miles from my house, so I go over there and I check their house because they're in Florida. So I go over and check their house, and this is a good excuse as any to ride the bike, right? Hop on the bike and go over and check the house. It's a destination and just a chance to get out and ride a little bit. So that's really all this is just an excuse to get on the bike and ride. I don't foresee there being a lot of traffic today. It is Christmas Day, so, and it's 11:30, so most everybody's probably at their Christmas destination at this point. My kids came over last night. We did Christmas last night. I still feel like I'm overdressed, but I feel like it's for the best. My upper body's pretty warm. This bike does an amazing job of keeping the wind directly off of you. You still get that open air feeling and everything, but it's not directly blowing on you, so it has those shin guards on it, which are pretty cool. So it keeps a lot of the wind off of my legs, which is the worst part, was the worst part on the GL. There was no leg protection. It had a full fairing, but I think I want to talk a little bit about this bike on the way over there. I've always ridden vintage Japanese bikes, and always figured my next bike would probably be a Goldwing, and it very easily could have been. I started last fall looking for another bike. I was riding an 83 GL650 Silver Wing, and I love that bike. It was a great bike. but it just wasn't comfortable enough for up touring. So at that point last fall, I decided to start looking for bikes that were comfortable up touring bikes. I always figured I'd end up with a Goldwing. It seemed like the natural progression of things. This is an 08 Harley Davidson Ultra Classic Electra Glide, and it had 32,000 miles on it when I bought it. I got it from my uncle. I actually rode it last fall, a year ago this fall. I went once when we were up there, and I liked it. I was like, you know what, this could be in the pool. My only criteria I was looking for was comfortable up touring, and this checked that box. That was the only box I had. So I added it to the bikes that I was looking for all of those other touring bikes that fit that category. And I would find like a Harley and I would ask him questions about it, because he knows infinitely more about them than I do, because I've never dealt with them. And finally he came back one day and he says, "You want to just buy this bike?" And I was like, yeah, okay. You know, he shot me a price, and I was like, yeah, that's a little more than I want to spend, but you know what? You know what I got with this was knowing that the bike was well maintained. He does a good job of taking care of his equipment. So I know it wasn't abused. I know it was well maintained, and it made sense to go a little bit over my price range for that satisfaction of knowing that. So I bought it, and I took delivery of it April 12th, like I said, with 32,000 miles on it. It's got 43 on it now. For the year, I'm up over 12,000 miles, which is the most I've ever ridden in a year. I think my previous was somewhere between 8 and 8,500, somewhere in there, for a year's riding. And I ride March through October. I'm a commuter, so those are all the miles I would rack up in a year. I did a trip this summer with it down to Blue Ridge Parkway. We rode north to south on the Blue Ridge Parkway. We went over to Tennessee to the Cherahalla Skyway and Deals Gap, Tail of the Dragon, and all of the really great riding down in Tennessee. We dipped down into Georgia. My uncle was closer than what we had anticipated, so we spent a little bit of time with him in the afternoon one day, and it's just been a great summer on this bike. Never in my life did I think that I would end up on a Harley Davidson, and I came into it with an open mind. My mindset was, let's try it. We'll see. I might not like it. I might ride it a year. I might ride it a couple years. But I've got no complaints about this bike. It'll pull, commuting, it pulls about 42 miles to the gallon. I did have a couple times when we were on our trip that I hit over 50, but very few. Usually mid 40s was where I was at, which isn't bad for the size of bike that it is and the type of riding that we were doing. A lot of mixed riding, so yeah, I can't complain about it at all. It has done everything that I wanted it to do in terms of being a up touring bike. My wife has no hesitations about getting on this thing. She is still doesn't have the range that I do. Like, I could sit on this thing for an hour, 2 hours without too much problem. It's got that backrest on it, and she doesn't like to sit on it that long. But the difference between this and the 650 is that when she gets off of it, she's not complaining. She's not like, oh, my butt hurts, my legs are cramped up, that type of stuff. So the comfort of it for both of us, and to be honest, when she was on the 650 with me, I would get fatigued quicker, and I would be in that same hour category, 45 minutes to an hour, and then I got to get off. So this bike, there were times on our trip where we were on it for 2 hours, and I didn't have my backrest on it then. There were times on the trip, and if I'd had the backrest, 2 hours would not have been a problem. we did a couple 2-hour stints, hour and a half, pushing 2 hours, and at the time with no backrest, it really hurt my back. But with the backrest on there, it's great. I have no regrets buying this bike. It's been a great bike. It's mechanically sound. It's comfortable to ride. The one thing that I don't ride a bike for this. It's not the reason I ride a bike. But one thing that I really hadn't anticipated was the, like, I don't want to say, I guess you could call it public support or recognition. Like, this is a pretty sharp bike. It's a pretty high-end bike, in my opinion, and it does look pretty good for what it is, and it gets noticed. Could use a blinker, maybe. That might be helpful. It gets noticed. There were times, you know, people sitting out on their porch watching us ride by, wave. Never happened on the 650. And there were times when we were stuck in traffic trying to make a left-hand turn, and there's a line of traffic in the other lane coming the other way, and people are like, man, that's a nice bike, out their window. And you know, so there's that level of recognition that the bike gets that, you know, I'm not into riding motorcycles for that, but it's kind of interesting how the difference in a bike, it's the same people on the bike, and like hardly got recognized at all on the 650, yet on this thing people are waving all the time and everything. So I don't know, it's just it's an interesting observation on my part, I guess. Yeah, we're running 60 miles an hour at about 2100 RPMs. With that 6-speed transmission, this thing, it's amazing on the highway. It really is. I can run like 80 miles an hour and be at like right around $3,000, which is tacking up for this bike, but it's not stretching it really. This does have the 96 cubic inch motor with the 6-speed transmission. And my uncle said when he bought it, that was the main reason he bought it, because that's the motor he wanted, and that was the transmission he wanted. He'd had Harleys previous to this, and you know, he said he never had issues with any of them. So, am I going to keep this bike forever? Am I a Harley convert? I don't know. I do like the bike. I like the way it sounds. It makes a neat sound. I've just got stock pipes on this thing. He had some Screaming Eagles with it, and he's like, oh, it's terribly loud, and I never put them on, and I sold them. And I do like the tone that it has with the stock exhaust. It's not obnoxiously loud, and like, it's easy for my wife and I to talk to each other really when we're on the bike. So that's another part of why I like the quieter exhaust. Like I said, no complaints on this bike. I just never figured I'd ride a Harley, but here I am. Never say never. And I never said I wouldn't own one. It was not something that I ever sought out to get. I could have very easily gotten a Goldwing. I really like the 2000 to, what are they, 2018 GL 1800s. That era of Goldwings I think is pretty cool. The next gen, I do like them. They're still way out of my price range. You can get the same year as this for about the same price as this in a Goldwing. And I wouldn't hesitate to buy a Goldwing either. So it took me a long time to get used to riding this. Like, I was so comfortable on my 650 and so used to how it rode, and it was just second nature. And it took me quite a while to get to that point on this bike. It's just that much different in the balance of it and figuring out that balance. It's a big heavy bike. It's probably by itself over 800 pounds, I would say. My uncle said it was 800, but I have a feeling it's more than that. It sure feels like it, but it makes it for a nice comfortable ride too. So my air temperature gauge is below 40, but on my phone it said 43, so it's not particularly warm out. And people are like, oh, I can't believe your road, it's so cold out. But people ride snowmobiles, they go outside, you just have to dress for it. You have to layer up and have warm gear, and I do. I've got a heavy jacket, and right now that's good down. I've worn it on a bike around 30 degrees, and it keeps me warm. And I've got layers underneath it, and I'm pretty warm underneath that. And then I've got some cold weather riding pants, which they do a pretty good job. My lowers are a little chilly, but they're not like frozen. And I'm within a mile or so of Mom and Dad's house, so it's not like I'm going a great distance. It's not like I'm going to be on here for hours. It's like I said, it is just a ride to say that I went out on Christmas. Oh, there's somebody fishing for snow, getting their snow machines all ready. I've never owned a snowmobile, not a newer one, and I did go snowmobiling with some friends. Gosh, it's probably been 20 years at this point that we went. And it was fun, but it's not something I really wanted to get into ever. So I just never got into snowmobiling. I stick with motorcycles. I'll stick with riding motorcycles in December. So you can't compare this to, a sport bike. It's not a sport bike. You can't compare that. It's not apples to apples. That's apples to oranges. This bike gets up and moves, gets out of its way. When you get on it, it's not a problem. So it's not a slouch. And some people are like, oh, Harleys are slow. And well, they are what they are. It's not a dog. It's not a slouch. It does just fine. Great, I got to ride through the mud. Oh boy. Let's get to the cement. There we go. June did not like that at all. Oh, look at how soft it is over there. I hate that commercial. Belwasic. Alright, I'm gonna run in and check the house and make sure everything's okay. Gotta take some selfies to prove I did it. Now I gotta see if I can get out of here without crashing. I think if I go straight, I might be better off. Got some mud on the rear fender now. Uh-oh. Alright. See if I can negotiate this swampy mess in front of me. Doesn't look bad, but when you're on a 800-pound bike with street tires, it's gonna sink pretty hard. Oh, good, there's no traffic. Everything's copacetic at the folks' house. So when I ride, I tend to ride in circles. I don't like coming down that road and then turning around and going back. So there's always an alternative route. And like I said, ride in circles. actually not bad out here today. I've had bronchitis. I was diagnosed with it about a week and a half ago. It's still hanging on. My voice is cracking and not really there. So I think I'm gonna take this route, this portion of the ride, and not say a whole lot. It's Michigan in December. It's not particularly pretty. Not a lot of scenery in the winter time. All the leaves are off the trees. We have a lot of maple and oak trees and a variety of hardwoods and softwoods, and so they all lose their leaves in the wintertime, and it looks pretty stark and not a lot of scenery. And they're putting some windmills up down here. It used to be the closest windmills were over towards Alma, however you want to say it. But the last time I came down this section of Freeland Road, I seen they had some windmills up. They weren't turning then, so I don't know if they're functional, or operational yet. But they're up, so that's interesting. Some people hate them. I don't really care. I don't think that should be our only source of energy, but I think it's a pretty good alternative. If we can make energy out with the wind, why not? Might save some resources otherwise. Gear on this bike has a whine to it. I don't know what it is. It doesn't seem to affect anything, but I can always tell when I'm in 5th gear because it has a whine, and I don't know if it's the model. I don't know if it's this bike. I don't know. It's not a negative thing. It just whines. I don't spend a lot of time in 5th gear anyway, so. Actually, in the mountains of Tennessee and West Virginia, when we were coming through those, there were a couple hills that it was really struggling in 6th gear. So there was a couple times where it's like, you better drop a gear because it was just struggling, and you don't realize the incline that you're on, really. You're just enjoying the scenery and everything, and all of a sudden the bike's lugging, and you're like, what's going on? And so you drop a gear, and it's fine. So oh, just a heads up, I don't know if the SD card I have is going to be big enough for this whole ride. I think it will be. So we may not get to the end of it. Well, we'll get to the end of it one way or another. Ooh, there's an old Falcon. Pretty rough shape. You don't find old cars in Michigan that are in good condition. Like you see, I watch a lot of shows where they do barn finds and stuff like that, and it's not in Michigan. People in Michigan drove their cars, and when they put them away, they weren't necessarily stored in the best way, and most of the time, by the time they put them away, they were pretty worn out. So you don't often find a nice barn find in Michigan. I'm not saying you can't, I'm saying it's not something that's very common. Car must be a turd. It sat there, I bet it sat there almost a year, that same spot. I got up yesterday morning, there was snow on the ground, it was a little colder out. I was like, yeah, I'm done riding for the year. And then by the time the kids come over for Christmas last night, most of the snow had melted out of the yard, and this morning the only snow that's left is where I shoveled it. So I didn't check the temperature. I don't really care. I really wasn't planning on going for a ride. Missed it. So it happens when you don't ride very much. You get a little rusty. You do things like not complete the upshift. Oh, they put a stupid roundabout up here. It's the most ridiculous roundabout. I don't know. I've never seen this particular intersection all that busy. I've been on it from both ways, and it's never been to the point where, oh my gosh, I wish they'd do something about the traffic here. I don't know why they put this dumb thing in. It used to just be straight through this way, and then you had to stop the other way. I don't know. Somebody had some money they had to spend, I guess. Yeah, because those things aren't cheap. Now they did put one up here a little bit further, you'll see it. And that one made sense. It's at a point where on this side of the river, there's a lot of residential houses, and then the school's on the other side. So people in the morning are taking their kids to school, they're leaving for work, and that particular section of road, that particular intersection was really busy, and traffic would back up a couple different times throughout the day. So for them to put a roundabout in there, it made a lot of sense. Right there, doesn't make any sense at all. I like looking at people's junk and drive by a house that's got like dead cars and campers and stuff. I don't know, it's just kind of fun to look. Looking for those hidden gems. Yeah, this is Michigan riding. This is riding in central Michigan. Long, flat, straight stretches of ground. No elevation changes, no curves. If I want curves in this area, I gotta go a little bit further than what I was at my mom and dad's house, and take Pine River Road down to St. John's. That's a fun twisty turny road, and I probably should have done that today, but I wasn't. I really thought it was going to be colder out here. I could very easily have gone over there. It's a 2-hour round trip for me, and it would have been really easy to do today. See what I mean? If I'd have been on the Honda, hey, you wouldn't have cared. Oh, look at that idiot riding on Christmas. But I'm on the Harley, so I get a nod and a finger wave. It is what it is. Building a house way back there. Somebody is. Oh, somebody's getting a nice new pole barn. That's a pretty good one too, man. A little size to that one. Coming up on that roundabout, that makes sense. Up in that thing a little bit. It's usually not that high. Let's see what we got going on here today. Alright, we got a clear shot through it. I probably should ride down River Road. Nah. I'm a half hour in at this point. Time-wise. thinking the video is going to be a little less. Coming up on Freeland, if you've never been to Freeland, Michigan, you're going to get to see it all in one shot. It's not that big of a, as far as a town, there's not a lot going on there. It's residential primarily. It's a lot of residences for the surrounding areas. Get to shoot through this light instead of sit at it. Awesome. It's got your usual businesses, your banks and gas stations and dentists and churches and hardware and grocery store and a couple fast food places, but primarily it's residential. Nice Camaro. Really wish they'd redo this section of road. This section and Garfield, just this choppy mess. The stinkiest dairy farm in the county, probably for 3 counties. It doesn't stink too bad today, but man, on those hot summer days, you're going to Freeland, you want to avoid this road. Boy, that's quite a stop right in the middle of the intersection there, dummy. Get off your phone maybe and you'd have seen that stop sign. People scare me. There's a 3-way stop there. She come up on that hard and fast, barely slowed down in the middle of the intersection, rolled through it on her phone. My word. Yeah, it scares me sometimes to be out here riding. That's why I try to avoid highly populated areas when I'm riding. Northern Michigan's a good place to ride because it's not very populated, and the traffic isn't nearly as bad as what it is in this area. You still have morons out there looking at their phone when they're trying to drive, but they're fewer and far between. So along with riding to the Blue Ridge Parkway in Tennessee, I'm doing a big trip. I did a couple trips up to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, which we have a family cabin up there, and go up there on different occasions. My wife went with me one weekend. We did a weekend up there. And I did a couple trips to Ascota, which is where I teach motorcycle class, one of the places. So I didn't just commute on it. I did some, like, I guess you call them mini trips or weekend trips. Up to the UP and back, I think, is right around 500 miles. Somewhere between 400 and 500 mile trip, and it depends on if I do any riding while I'm up there. On our trip to the Blue Ridge, you get a lot of time on a bike to sit and think, and I decided that I want to try to ride motorcycle in all 50 states. I made a sizable dent. Well, I don't want to say sizable. I made a dent in that this summer, and on that trip we hit quite a few states, and I want to keep adding to that. So I've been looking at it, and I have 2 different options this year, probably, of where I would like to go. One of them's west of Michigan, one of them's east of Michigan, and I just don't know which one I want to take. So it's not at the point where I have to decide, and it may not decide until a month before. But usually I get the itch to plan a trip sometime in February, March. Cabin fever sits in. You've been in the house for a long time. I haven't ridden for a month and a half, 2 months, and you're like, I gotta plan a ride, because as soon as it gets nice, I'm going. So we were at this intersection earlier, I came from the right where that Equinox is over there. I say I ride in circles, big giant circle. This is the only portion of the road that I've ridden on today, was right there that I crossed. The rest of it is untouched by me. And that's the way I like to ride. I don't want to just ride somewhere and then turn around and ride back. Sometimes I'll do that route the opposite. Like I'll go down Freeland Road to get over to Mom and Dad's, and then come back up Gordonville. And that's just the way things are going right now in the housing market in this area. It's crazy. Guy lives over on the 11 Mile. That's where that truck sits all the time anyways. Ooh, got a little slippage on the rear end there. A little unnerving. Oh, that's why Speedway's so busy. It's the only place open today. This is Auburn. Those are the two fast food places in Auburn. I never used to like McDonald's, but that Burger King is so awful that I like that McDonald's. See if I can keep from getting run over up here. I don't know, the marathon might be open. Come on, make a decision, lady. Gas pedal's on the right. No, marathon's closed today. That would be why Speedway is so busy. The only thing open in Auburn right now. Somebody's got to work on Christmas. That sucks. See how fast we're going. I hate this thing. Used to be 30 miles an hour all the way through Auburn. They put those stupid things up, and for this section right in front of the school, they have you drop down to 25. And it's not just during school hours, it's all the time. And some people do and some people don't. So when you're coming onto this road, you got to really watch traffic coming, because you don't know if they're really going to slow down or not. And then you got the people that go from the town's a mile long. There's a stoplight at both ends. You got people that go from one stoplight to the other at 20 miles an hour. It's like you're not even doing the speed limit, dude. Ooh, got a kind of nice new grill. Maybe a smoker thing. Home sweet home. See if I can keep from running into anything. Gotta be careful turning on stuff. Soft, squishy ground. There you have it. My Christmas Day ride on the Ultra. Probably the last one of the year, if I had to guess. Small chance I get out next weekend. I haven't checked the weather, but if it's decent, I will. If it's like this, for sure. But I think it's supposed to cool off. We're supposed to get some snow. So we're going to put her away, roll her back into storage, winter storage, and maybe get some work done in there. If you happen to get out and go for a ride somewhere, nice weather or not, ride safe.